Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Anna Bross. I'm the head of communications for The Atlantic, and we're so thrilled to have you all here this morning for a conversation about the Glorias, which, of course, is based on Gloria Steinem's life and her life's work on behalf of the women's movement. The Atlantic is a media partner of the Sundance Film Festival for the second year, and as part of that, we are really thrilled to be leading conversations with films and with makers that elevate, inform, and challenge our way of thinking. We are so grateful to the Institute and to Canada Goose for hosting us in this intimate space. We're also lucky to be in this room right now. And with that, I'm going to introduce Gloria Steinem, who really needs no introduction. And Julie Taymor, who's the director of the Glorias. Together with my colleague, the Atlantic staff writer covering culture, Shirley.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you both so much for being here. Before we begin, I just wanted to provide a little context on the Glorias for those of you who haven't been able to catch a screening here in Park City just yet. So the Glorias is based on Gloria's memoir, My Life on the Road. It's an unconventional memoir. It covers her lifetime, but not necessarily in chronological ways. It tells stories in relation to her travels around the world. And so what Julie has done is taken that book and packed it all into a 2 hours and 19-minute film. So I want to start there. That's quite the challenge. I want to know what moments across Gloria's lifetime were at the very top of your wish list that you absolutely wanted to see translated to screen.
I know this is odd. Is this Anya? But I actually think the early part of her life. And I think the reason I feel that is because many of us are familiar with Gloria from Ms. Magazine on. At least you've seen there's HBO docs. There's lots of accessibility to Gloria from that age. So weird that she's sitting here. From this woman from that age on. But what startled me was her mother and father and her upbringing and how she became the activist that she became, her time in India, the talking circles, where that started, her ability to cross cultural, racial boundaries. To see the later Gloria is not to know the Gloria. To see the earlier Gloria and to see the women who have made Gloria who Gloria is. And that's only because Gloria is Gloria. Not everybody who meets black and Indian and goes there becomes a full, rich human being with such generosity. But even the part with her dad, Leo, and then she said to me the other night, and I'm not gonna put your words in my mouth, but
no, it sounds so much better when you
well, can I say what she said, which moved me? She said the thing that startles her is the life of her mother and the death of her father. And I think that puts it so succinctly, as she can only do, because I'm not succinct. Although the movie is short for 80 years, it is short for 80 years. But that kind of paper moon relationship, if you see that relationship with Leo, the traveling, the little girl, and then you think about her relationship to men, and I think that Leo is the main man in her life. I mean, the other good man is Charlie Soap, Wilma Mankiller's husband, and I really wanted to make sure that the men were good in the movie, even the men who have. This is important to me. The New York Times Magazine editor. I liked that guy, and he liked her. And I've seen too many movies about sexism and TV shows where they're assholes, frankly. And I don't feel that these guys were. I feel like they're men who respected Gloria, who didn't quite get how far advanced she was as a writer and an intellect, but who wouldn't be turned on to her physically. I mean, this is something, maybe because I'm from an older generation, it doesn't shock me. What I loved was her reaction. Put the letters down and leave. Now, not every woman can do that. I understand that. But I think it's such a simple reaction. She made in 1 second, these are the high points for me, in 1 second she made that decision that I can't stay here. It'll happen somewhere else. I'm a freelance woman. I can make it. I don't have any money, but I can make it. So that was a very important moment. she dedicated her book to her abortionist, or not to the abortionist, to the doctor who okayed, right? That
You
that-
name him.
and she named him. But what guts? What guts to dedicate a book to the man who said to her, "Promise me two things. One, you will never tell anybody my name," which she did, but he was dead.
After he was long dead,
And the other is, you will do what you want to do with your life.
Now the thing about
Can I just say, but I think what Julie has captured is something that I hadn't thought about in a while, and I think may be true for a lot of us, which is that we are like those nested Russian dolls, you know? So our earlier selves are all still within us. And we don't remember it all the time. I mean, what's moving to me, too, about the movie is that you reactivate the layers of Russian dolls in me, and they talk to each other.
Could I give it, because there's something that, yes, I didn't talk about that, because the idea of the Glorias, and we have 4 or 5 of them, well, 5 of them, I shouldn't say 4 or 5, talking to each other was a way that I could actually glue her book together. But I'm going to give you one example, and it might ruin it if you haven't seen the movie, but you're here, so too bad. I mean, you're getting too much information. You should go see a movie without knowing anything. But one thing that I feel is, Gloria is always called an icon, and I said this yesterday, but it was a revelation yesterday because I heard it again the night before. And an icon to me is something that's not living. It's a sculpture, it's hard, it's stone, it's wood, it's gilded, it's religious, you know, all the things that Gloria is, you know. And for me, the thing that I wanted most to do was to really get to her humanity and to her vulnerability and to the various facets. So an example is, and I'll tell you why, another reason. People look at finished products, and I've been through this too, and especially about women. They lay a trip on them, and they think that they have no humor, no vulnerability, they're hard. What do we hear about our candidates, our female candidates? As women leaders, we go through this all the time. So the fact that when Gloria goes to Minneapolis to speak at the church, and she's in that taxi where all the anti-abortionist right-wingers are screaming, Gloria Steinem is a baby killer. Gloria Steinem, you know, just the hate, the vitriol. I put the 6-year-old girl in that moment because that's how we feel. And people don't know that. People don't actually know that, no, it's not the one who comes out of the car looking composed, looking like she's not, you know, going to be affected by this. She is weeping. So she is inside that car going, what the fuck am I doing here? Do I have a right to be here? Are people going to, am I going to hurt people? Are people, you know, so she says in the church, I'm as surprised as you are that I'm here. And she laughs. Well, that's Gloria. She laughs. But I felt that through the Glorias, the various young women and, you know, the various 5 Glorias, that we would be able to show what's the inside.
Yeah.
What's going on.
Julie, you referred to it in another interview as a bus out of time. I mean, when I think about this film, so I saw it yesterday, as you know, it's quite the marriage of memoir and storyteller. I mean, you are such a visual director. I don't know if, for more context, just watching Julie's older films like Frida and Across the Universe, there's such a stylistic flair. And so the Bust Out of Time incorporates all of the Glorias that she casts in the film, and they interact at times. So Gloria, I want to know, when you first heard this pitch, I mean, what made you say yes? What was your reaction?
Well, when Julie first said she wanted to make a film based on my book, I mean, I said yes because I had seen her films. I mean, I would have said yes to anything she asked me. I mean, you know. But I didn't understand how she was going to do it because...
Neither did I at that point.
I mean, it's one thing to write a book that covers 80 years because you can have different chapters and you can leave spaces on the page and you know that the reader's going to make the leap and so on. I had no idea how she was going to do this. And that's the genius of the Bus Out of Time, I have to say. you know, that she just totally invented. There's nowhere in the book. There's not even a bus in the book.
Yeah, you got a Greyhound, right?
Yeah, we got a Greyhound. Yeah.
And now we're going to get on a Greyhound and get people to vote. But anyway. But it's such a genius way of going through time and people getting on in different moments and talking to each other and looking out the window and seeing different eras and seeing things from the past, and you know, it's just a genius. You know, I could not possibly, and that's part of why I kept saying to people who would say to me, "Did you have approval?" I said, "Are you kidding me? How could I approve?" You know, she's a genius. She invented all these things I could not possibly, and that also rejuvenated in me the Russian doll effect, because now I also find it moving, you know, to see previous selves talking to each other. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Gloria, I know you're no stranger to a set. I remember your cameo in the first Wives Club. You've shown up. You've shown up in TV projects, movie projects before. But what was it like stepping on the set of a movie about yourself and then, spoiler, I mean, this got revealed already, and making your cameo on that bus?
Well, I've rarely been on a movie set, and so first of all, I was just totally knocked out with the ingenuity of doing. I mean, it was like a big airplane hangar. There were how many different sets on the bus was there. There was a movie, the father and daughter going into the movie. There were all these. It was the only.
Vegas was it there? There were
There were. It was their last day on the set in Georgia, and I, you know, was just astounded, you know. But I did get a big shrek, I have to say, when I saw father and daughter going into the movie, because
it's not in the movie, unfortunately.
Never mind, I saw it. No, I was just astounded at the ability to produce authentic emotion in an inauthentic setting.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, I'm sorry for the spoiler alerts, but on that bus, now that you know she's on the bus, is our crew. Just so that you know that. Those are the people, all those women on that bus and the few good men that are there. We did allow some of the male crew on but yeah, you'll see Rodrigo Prieto, you'll see Sandy Powell, you'll see the makeup designers, you'll see all of the people on that bus. Our producer is there. She happens to be behind somebody, so you may not see her, but it was they died when she showed up, because it was the last day, and you know, you have all the Glorias, and we're all the Glorias, really, so that was an amazing day.
Now, Julie, you've done a biopic before. You did Frida. The difference between that one and this one is that you have your primary source in front of you. You can ask her any question you want. First of all, what was at the top of your list that you wanted to ask Gloria about?
God, I have to remember this now. Do you remember what were the first things?
I don't. My main role was just answering informational questions.
You were there, Lynn Hindy, our producer. Well, like you said, you wanted to ask her a lot about her childhood. Yeah. Yes, I mean there were the whole barbershop, which we all love very much. The barbershop scene where she meets this little girl Ruby who can tap dance better than she, because she wanted to be a dancer. She told us that story, and I just felt that had to be in the film, and was so moving because it had nothing to do with politics or anything. It was two young girls who bonded together over tap dancing, and the kind of generosity of the barbershop, of the men. It was a black barbershop, and this little white girl walks in, which is very awkward for a male, barbershop in the first place. And that is the beginning of her going outside of her own milieu into another so comfortably, with such open arms given to her. And so that was one thing. The what? The knives. Oh yeah, people don't know about that.
Yeah, I really was a magician's assistant as one of my many jobs while I was in high school.
Yeah, and she dressed up in 14 in what would have looked like a bunny suit, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean,
it did throw knives at me and so on. And right. And actually, and there was another couple who were singers, who were girlfriend and boyfriend and so on, and he escaped from town with our money. He never paid us.
That sounds like your whole life.
Gloria, when you were reading the script, I'm wondering which scenes maybe you were surprised that Julie included from your life that weren't in your book.
I don't think I read the script, actually. I think.
You did?
Well, I mean, I looked at the script, but
Oh, you mean you didn't deeply read this?
yeah, no, because
That's how I read your book.
No, but I'm not capable of. I'm really not capable, I think, of reading a script and understanding what it's going to show. Right. So I mean, it wasn't until you started to ask me questions that I really felt like I was participating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well then, Julie, I want to ask a little bit about casting each of the Glorias. So we've got Julianne Moore, Alicia Vikander, 2 Oscar winners, and then 2 fabulous younger actresses. How did you find them? And Gloria, did you get to meet every one of them and talk to them for a while?
Well, I wasn't part of I just trusted her to do
You
the
helped with getting
casting.
Bette Midler.
Yes,
She
yeah,
called
I
Bette
called
Midler.
up Bette Midler, right. Because it's easier than going through agents and everything like that. So she told me to call up Bette Midler.
So casual.
Bette Midler I love Bette Midler. And Bette Midler is so great as Bella Abzug in this film. She is fan-fucking-tastic. She is totally great, right.
And she said she had the hats.
Yeah, she said, great. She said, oh, I love Belle. I still think I see her campaigning in the streets of New York. And I have the hat.
And I don't think you all know it, but at the 50th birthday party, Bette was a singer.
Bette sang at my 50th birthday party, right.
So I almost asked her, but it would have been odd if it was Bella Abzug up there on the stage singing, so
Yeah.
no.
Now, going back to casting the Glorias then, what were you looking for?
The young girls, I think that Lulu Wilson sent a tape, and I didn't audition anybody else. Somebody was smart enough. She was the first person we saw, and she got the part based on her tape. And the other, Ryan Kira Armstrong, she auditioned like many girls by tape. You know, you're in Savannah and you're casting, and that's what you have to do as a director. So we had our main casting people, Telsey. They got lots of auditions, and then we had local casting people from Atlanta, and so I just did the normal audition process. But I'm kind of good at that. I mean, I really will say, people say, oh, I'm so visual, but frankly, casting is not my weakness. It's if you look at the other movies, there have been some really fine performances by unknown actors. I'm not just saying, you get a Julianne Moore. She's the first person we cast, and we had to go out to raise the money and everything. We knew Julianne Moore. Look, we knew that she would be able to do Gloria. Finding the Alicia was a little bit more, well, who's going to do this? Who can actually have the beauty, the brains, the unusual nature? And at first, because Alicia hasn't done that many American roles, there was a question about, can she nail the accent and her accent? And so that was the only, I wouldn't really say full reservation, but the only quandary was, but as far as everything else, and she and I spoke on the phone, and her passion, her mother is a very political person, and her love of the material and the part, I just was so excited when she said she wanted to do it.
And the miracle is, to me, that the scenes in India are exactly, I don't know how she did this, because to replicate India at that period, on the train and in a village, and it's exactly right. And the women in the train car
Yeah,
are
well, some of them,
right.
one is an actress, the rest are not. But I went to Indonesia when I did that trip, like you went to India right after college. I went to Indonesia. I stayed 4 years. I had the exact same train ride in Java. Actually, we were all on the floor in a cart with animals and women and children, and got the exact same questions. Why aren't you married? Where's your husband? Do you have children? It was not foreign to me. But the other thing is, we had an amazing Indian crew. I wouldn't go to another country and have my whole crew come. We had Rodrigo Prieto, Sandy Powell from afar, worked with local Indian costume designers who knew how to do the period. We had a phenomenal crew. Take One was the head, and they did their job. They make movies in India, so they know what they're doing. And I really want to pay respect to them, because they did the job of making sure that the period, the cars, getting that train, that train, we went this way and this way and this way. And they're going, okay, watch out. It's going to have to stop now. Timing is coming, it's coming. Because we had to get off. It's a living train track. So, you go to the other side. Thank God the other side of the train. Because we shot all of that in 2 days. But it was for and we only brought Alicia. So we had 5 people come from the United States, and the rest were a phenomenal Indian crew. And I, having lived like Gloria abroad for many of the years of my life, this is comfortable for me. This is not something foreign.
Yeah, there's not much culture shock at this point, maybe.
Not in my life. Culture shock is Americans and critics. Those are always culture shocks.
Now, another fascinating thing about the film is that as it moves on from, the smaller nesting dolls from her childhood and on to, the 60s, the movement, and all these, I'm trying to avoid the word icon now. all these figures.
Yeah.
It kind of almost plays like a documentary. You found a lot of archival footage, and I understand that by the time we get to present day, you had shot Gloria the night of the 2016 election. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like, and then the decision to remove it from the film?
Yeah. Well, Gloria, this was 4 years ago when we started with the book, where we bought the book or whatever we did. And I guess all of us in this room thought that the election night would end with have a different ending. So Gloria invited us, and Samantha Powers opened up her apartment at the Waldorf, and 40 female ambassadors from around the world were there, and you walked into such excitement and such positive, hopeful energy. And we shot it. We had TV gals, Beverly and Bobby Berleffi. What's the other name? Yeah. They came. We as documentary filmmakers, there was no script yet, but I knew that we wanted, and they also covered her going out and giving talks. But the night of shooting that election was so depressing that it was if the whole room sagged. And watching each of these women go out of the room at different times when they saw what the outcome would be, and having to get back to the babysitter or back to, these women from Ghana, from Cambodia, from around the world, to be an ambassador from those countries, you knew what it took for those women to get to that position, and what their husbands had to give up, or their expectations of what their life would be like. And knowing that the funding, the women's programs would be out the window, it was horrendous. And then at the end of the night, she was one of the only people there, and she said, I have to go to the Javits Center because I am a foul weather friend. But before she went, she said, all right, not at all flummoxed. I mean, seriously, so weird. What is it behind that face? But she said, okay, now we have to look for the upside of the downside. And that is Gloria in a nutshell. That is, or an icon. that is her. And so that's great, but the material, we just felt when we got there, and it was in the script, that it was just too depressing. That's not where we are. We're not there right now. In fact, I'll tell you what ended up taking its place. Then we did shoot the Women's March, and that was exhilarating. But what took the place of that scene was the article. And the article that Gloria wrote the day after blew my mind, and I found it later. And that was being able to encapsulate what Hillary's loss means. And I'd rather that you speak about it because she's here. So,
Well, I was just thinking, I think what we don't understand, or what we know and forget, is that the most dangerous time is right after a victory, because that's when you get a backlash. So we had 8 years of Obama. We have a profoundly racist country, at least not all of us, but we're all struggling, but say a third of the country is seriously, devotedly racist. And also, how many times in history have we had 8 years of one party and not got the other? So, we didn't anticipate that backlash. And I think that's the lesson to me, that we have to keep remembering that, that there were not lynchings during slavery. There were lynchings during Reconstruction, right? So, and we have a victory, and we think, you know, and we forget, okay, now is when we. So that to me was the big lesson that I was trying to get across. Not, so I mean, it's true that I'm a hopeaholic. Okay, I am a hopeaholic, but I was not trying to be optimistic. I was also trying to be realistic in the sense that we have to recognize that this was inevitable, and this has instructed us. And you know, this asshole that we have in the White House is instructing us at a high level of, you know, what's wrong with the country, and we have to use this to activate ourselves.
And you talked about in that article that for women to get to that inevitable, break that glass ceiling or get to that place is not a straight line, that it's a zigzag. Right. And that Hillary's loss actually will allow more women, which I think, look what happened with the Congress. What she said the day after the election is exactly what happened. And so I felt that watching her at the typewriter write this right after was as an inspiring way to look at a loss. And that would keep us going. So then we come back to the bus, and all right, are we there yet? Says the little one, says the little Gloria. No one answers because not really, but we're still going to Washington. Haven't we been here 20 times? A gazillion times. Are we going to stop going? No fucking way. I mean, this is the thing. So you're not allowed, by Gloria Steinem's theory, to get depressed and to stop. Because if you do, there's just then you're responsible. Basically, you're responsible for where we are. So, I think that's what I hope is that inspirational hopaholic. See, I'm not. She's made me, but I can't say the word. I've never used it. Hopaholic. Yeah.
That's a lot of H's.
Yeah. I hope that it's contagious, basically.
We will turn to audience questions shortly, so please prepare those in your minds. But I do have a couple questions to wrap up with. Gloria, I know you're a big fan of statistics. A lot.
Only if I like them.
Well, a lot more than you than public speaking, at least. We'll put it that way. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, because we're on the subject of activism, with art. This film is obviously being released during an election year, and I wanted to start off with a couple of stats about the industry. So the percentage of top-grossing films that were featuring female protagonists rose from 31% in 2018 to 40% in 2019, which is a historic high. The number of directors of the top 100 grossing films were women, doubled. I did not say that correctly. Doubled since 2018, which is another historic high. Now, the antithesis to that is that when you look at it in smaller pieces, in terms of race and ethnicity, the percentage of black women in speaking roles in film declined in 2019. The number of female roles who have identifiable occupations and to be shown working on screen also decreased. And so when you hear these statistics, we are in the middle of, a significant movement, at least since 2017. What is the key to sustaining the increases and not taking those steps back?
Well, the question is, where does the money come from and who's doing the hiring? That's pretty basic, right? And we're not there yet. We're congratulating each other that we are more likely to be hired, which I'm all in favor of, but where does the money come from? And, who has the power is still different. And also, I think especially with racial representation and, gay and lesbian and trans, it depends who is doing. I think we press and carry on, and we get some token changes, and then it goes back, So it is, once again, not a straight line, but a jagged line.
Actually, speaking of financing, Julie, I understand that you did have a little trouble finding financing for this film, or at least nobody was willing to put in more than $10 million, correct me if I'm wrong, at a time?
About. The thing that we got when we went out to Hollywood in the beginning was basically a fear that it's probably a political film and it's for women. well, which is absolute nonsense. It's not for women, it's for people. And so I didn't feel that would be nice. I would have loved to have made it for 10 million. That would be great. I'm not opposed to that. But her life is too big for that. And why should she, of all heroes in our country, be treated as if it's a little low-budget movie when you get these epic Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King, LBJ, all the big heroes that we've heard about and have had multiple movies made about them and TV shows. Why don't we have that with the women? I mean, yes, Frida was an $11 million film. I'm glad I could do that. We shot in Mexico. You know, it was a different thing. Her story takes place across 80 years and across many, 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 many locations. So she took us, and we are not going to say who gave us the money because they don't get involved in the entertainment business. But this was raised through not-for-profit. And the people who actually gave the money, if it recoups, which we hope it does, they don't care to recoup their money. They want it to go to women's causes. And it's up to Gloria to choose those causes. What could be better?
Just lastly, before we turn to audience questions, you mentioned the fear that that people will see this film as a film only for women. Now, obviously, there are men in the audience, and I'd love for both of you to talk about what you hope young men specifically take away from watching this film.
Do you want to say?
Well, I think, you know, there's a huge generational difference, right? I mean, you know, if only the young men had been around when I was young. But I found good men because I had a good father. Always say I'm totally grateful to my father because it's because of him that I am still friends with all my old lovers because they were such good people, right? But I do think that it's different now, and I do feel, and just here at Sundance, you know, lots of young men here have come up to me seeing the film and just identified with it because it's about a social justice movement with which they identify. I mean, you know, hello, we are all human beings, okay? And the world is divided into two kinds of people, those who divide it into two and those who don't. And we are becoming much less a group that gender is made up, okay? The Native Americans who were here before us and still here, and thank you for doing a dedication at the beginning, you know, and saying, you know, whose land this is, did not have languages with he and she in it. They did not have a word for race, all right. This bonkers patriarchal racist stuff that we've been living with is not human nature. So I think we are finally beginning to see that we have way more in common with each other as human beings than the small divisions of gender and race and, you know, everything else we know.
All right. Yes, please put your hands together. We have time for audience questions. Please raise your hand. We have a mic runner in the back, so she'll be choosing.
Thank you both so much. So much respect for you both. I had a question for Julie. You know, we're talking about, you know, you gave the statistics, and I was curious about how getting more women in positions of leadership on film sets, how did you deal with that on the Glorias? And, you know, what's your advice in general for other women filmmakers based on how you've been able to make films and be so successful for where few other women have?
Well, that's a matter of opinion. Well, on the Glorias in particular, I wanted to work with Rodrigo Prieto because I just love him, and I did Frida with him, and I did Midsummer. So there wasn't any question about would I just arbitrarily go to find a female DP. But I'd work with Sandy Powell. Great, she's a woman. Kim Jennings who did the production design, worked on Across the Universe and The Tempest. She had been the art director, so this is like her first real movie as production designer. So bravo, Kim Jennings. I had had a female editor my whole life, Françoise Bonneau, who passed away, which devastated me. And then we were looking for a female editor because actually female editors have been the top editors forever. They are, because they stitch things together and they're the power behind the throne. And they really, editors, all the great ones, whether it's Thelma, I mean, they've been in that position forever. Crew, you saw. We had a lot of female on our crew, and I take my hat off to my producers for finding those people. Am I missing? It's a pretty balanced crew, male and female, which quite honestly I like, because that's the world. And I love the men on my crew because they love the Glorias. And the men who've seen this film, going back to here, the first thing they said, like Michael Barry, who's our sound mixer, or some of the other ones said, I can't wait to go to this with my daughters. I can't wait. And I just, I think it is important that you try and find the women and bring them into those positions. So that's good. But as an artist, you're only as good as your tools and your compatriots. So there's going to be that bit of you have to decide how far you're going to compromise just to have it all one way. And it can work. But, I think that there is a dilemma for some women directors where you've got to have it all one. If you want to do that and you're willing to do that, I think you will find it, but you may not, at this point in life, find every single one. So it's going to be a developmental process to get that many women into roles that are notoriously, historically, male grips, gaffers, they need to come in. They need to come in, and I think they will.
And it's important that we work together in all kinds of different ways, because part of the reason that we didn't get Hillary Clinton is because my male friends I could see in the media were saying things like, I cross my legs whenever I see her. I mean, what does that mean? She reminds me of my first wife outside Alamona. Okay, it's because the only women they had seen in authority over them were their mothers.
Yeah.
So when they saw Hillary
Teachers.
Clinton, they felt regressed to childhood, literally, because they had never seen in their lives a woman in authority over them, only their mothers. And until we get this as a natural, all about talent or whatever it is, we are not going to get females in leadership anywhere.
And it is good to have that mix, because that's the way the world is. For men to see women who are powerful as directors, DPs, or anything, not just in the costume design, makeup, hair, and editing, when they see that word spreads. That's how you get it done. And so I
Changes how they vote. I mean, it's just terribly important.
That's the most important thing.
Another question in the back.
Viva Kempner. I've been a documentary filmmaker for 40 years, and almost all my films were edited by women with full crews. But I'm also very politically involved. I live in Washington, D.C. We have no voting rights in Congress. I always have to say that. The film is magnificent. I felt like my whole past. And Bella, bless her soul, to have her. Just everyone's got to see it, which has to do with the fact, when are we going to start taking it out right away? Because we've got to get a woman nominated for president or vice president. And this film will be so encouraging, especially to the young people. So
we agree with you. I mean, it's interesting.
I mean, I started emailing people like Women in Film Chapter. I mean, we've got to get, I know there's a whole push for voting, to register to vote. We got to get this right away out.
And I think, this is another thing that we haven't touched on enough, which is, it's Gloria, but it's also Dorothy Pittman Hughes, Wilma Mankiller, Dolores Huerta, Lorraine Toussaint plays Flo Kennedy. But look at the women at the Houston Women's Conference. Look at those women on that stage talking. This is another thing that exactly, but also incredible women in power, incredibly inspiring women. And I think when you said who's the audience, that's why I want men to see this, because what you see in this film and what inspired me was watching women work together on a very intellectual, politically active, humorous. Look at the humor, the love between those women at Ms. Magazine. She said it. It's real. I mean, of course, there's adversity. There's the Betty Friedan, da 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 da. But we're not about that. Right now, we're about the harmony. And we're about women being able to lead, work together, support each other. My mother is 98 and wrote a book, Running Against the Wind. She was in politics all her life, and I watched her trashed by women in the early 60s and 50s. They were the jealousy, the kind of thing that happened with Hillary. It's enough already. We need to have women supporting women, and the men are already there, or they're coming along, let's say. So I agree with you. We've got to get it out.
We have a question. We have a question in the back. I see you.
Hi, my name is Kaya, and I'm originally from South Africa. I'm a local filmmaker here in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm glad you're addressing the issues with people of color in film. I'm grateful for those Tyler Perry film studios and such. We are still yet to see that unfold. My question to you is, how do you de-vilify strong women like that? And I have Winnie Mandela in mind, being from South Africa.
Yes.
How do you humanize a character like that?
Well, that's what movies are for, you know. I mean, okay, I'm so proud of this movie, and it should not take a movie about a white feminist to introduce people to black feminists who have always outnumbered white feminists from the beginning, okay? And look at the results of the last election. You know, when 96% of black women voted for Hillary Clinton and 51% of white women voted for Trump. I rest my case, all right? So
We're back to the stats.
you know, so our hope is that this introduces people to these great women, and that they have movies of their own, as Winnie Mandela should have a movie there. I mean, movies are, you know, all of human history. We've been sitting around campfires telling our stories. And in the campfire setting, everyone spoke in a circle. And so there was a time when everyone spoke and everyone listened for everybody. And movies are the current campfire. So it is so important that the movies look like the country. Right?
I saw a few more hands, and I think we have time for maybe one or two real quick questions.
Passing the mic.
First of all, it's just an honor to be in the same room as both of you. But I'm a student, I'm 20, so this whole movie is about your journey as a young woman to this chair right now. So I'm just wondering, for both of you, really, what advice you have for the next generation of hopeful Glorias, really.
Oh, I have. Okay. Here is my advice. Okay, this is totally my advice. Do not listen to me. I'm serious. Listen to yourself. There is an authentic, true voice in there. You are a miracle that could never, never, never exist before or again. You're a unique combination of heredity and environment. Each of us is, right? And crying is a good thing. And listen to yourself. And we are here to support you, right? And we need to hear your story so we can support your story.
And also, one of the reasons why I love the younger Gloria part, the your age part, was she was a terrible speaker. The Gloria that we see now and have seen for the last 40 years is not the Gloria of her 20s. She's not the one who had confidence that she could go out on that stage. And I think that that's what I hope happens with women your age, is that they say, all right, okay, all right, can I do this? Yes, I have to do it. I don't have a choice, and that's what she's saying.
And here's what you learn: you don't die. I mean,
Yeah,
you,
right. I don't die.
you think you're going to die, but you don't die. And also, the secret to it is just honesty, too. I mean, I discovered, as in the movie, that if I said to the audience, how many people here are afraid of public speaking, too? You know,
Right.
and I'm afraid of public speaking, that suddenly everybody was with you. You know, you didn't feel like you had to perform.
I think that was the perfect question to end on. Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you both again. Please give another round of applause. Thank you.